The storm raged outside as Julia sat alone in her cozy cabin, her book forgotten in her lap. A sudden noise made her jump, and she looked up to see that the fire in the fireplace had unexpectedly gone out. She shivered, feeling a sudden chill in the air, and reached for another log to add to the flames. As she got up to grab it, she heard a faint whispering sound, like someone calling her name. That was when the lights began to flicker, casting strange shadows on the wall. Julia tried to calm herself, telling herself that she was just being paranoid. But deep down, she knew that something wasn't right. She had always believed in the supernatural, but never before had she felt such a strong presence of malevolence. As she gripped the log in her hands, ready to toss it into the fireplace, she saw something move in the corner of her eye. She spun around, but there was nothing there. The storm outside was getting worse, and Julia could feel the howling wind trying to push its way into her small cabin. She tried to distract herself by reading, but her mind kept wandering back to the strange occurrences she had experienced. Suddenly, she heard a loud noise, like something knocking against the window. Julia leaped to her feet, her heart racing, and fumbled for the flashlight next to her chair. As she shone the beam outside, she saw a shadowy figure that looked like a person drifting past her window. She gasped, feeling a terrible sense of dread. The figure was gone from sight as suddenly as it had appeared. For a moment, Julia just stood there, trying to make sense of what she had seen. But then she heard a low, guttural growl coming from inside the cabin. She turned, shining her flashlight in that direction, and saw a pair of glowing eyes peering at her from the darkness. She screamed and stumbled backward, tripping over a chair and hitting the floor hard. As she scrambled to her feet, she could hear something moving in the shadows, coming closer and closer. Julia realized that she was not alone in the cabin, and that whatever was sharing it with her was not human. She remembered the pile of logs next to the fireplace and grabbed one, holding it like a weapon. The door was locked, so she ran to the window, but it too had been sealed shut. She was trapped. Suddenly she heard scratching sounds on the walls. They grew louder and louder until Julia could feel them vibrating through the floor. She knew that she had to act fast if she wanted to survive this night. She dropped the log and ran to the kitchen, looking for anything that could help defend herself. Her eyes fell on a heavy cast iron skillet. She grabbed it and made her way back to the main room. The scratching noises had stopped now, and an eerie silence fell over the cabin. Julia could hear her own heartbeat pounding in her ears as she waited, not daring to move. Suddenly she heard a faint whisper in her ear. She spun around, the skillet raised high, but there was no one there. In that moment, she realized that she was dealing with something beyond her comprehension, and that she had no idea how to fight it. Just as she was about to give up hope, she thought of something. She remembered a story her grandmother had told her when she was a child, about how she had once faced a demon that had haunted her in her dreams. Her grandmother had defeated it by calling out its name, forcing it to reveal its true form and disappear back to its own realm. Julia took a deep breath and called out into the darkness. "Who are you? Show yourself." At first, there was no answer, and Julia feared that she had failed. But then, slowly, something began to materialize in front of her, a humanoid figure made of shadow and mist. Fear gripped her heart as she stared at the monstrous being, but she forced herself to keep speaking. "Leave this place, and never return. I command you in the name of all that is good and holy." To her surprise, the figure began to shrink and dissolve until it vanished completely. Julia was left standing alone in her cabin, shivering and gasping for breath. But she knew that she had won. She had faced her fears and emerged victorious, and the storm outside slowly began to calm, as if it too had sensed that the danger was gone.
Thank you for listening to today's story. If you liked this story and would like to hear more, and/or you would have liked the story to turn out differently, or maybe have an idea for a spin-off to this story or another one altogether, just let us know in the comments below. There will be more stories to come shortly. As always, thank you for visiting my channel. You are all very appreciated.